Saraswati Shimaris Vengrace Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki
Jai.
Ramsa Gosha Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivastava Gaur Bhaktivedanta Ki
Jai.
Shri Radha Govinda Gop Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki
Jai.
Vrindavan Dham Ki
Jai.
Srimad Purnavadeep Dham Ki
Jai.
Manamai Ki
Jai.
Gangamai Ki
Jai.
Bhakti Devi Ki
Jai.
Veda Bhaktivedanta Ki
Jai.
Maharani Ki
Jai.
Nitai Gopramanandi.
Hari Hari Bol.
All glories to the Samad devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the Samad devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the Samad devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga.
So, I don't know how many of you were there. I saw the wonderful videos. I saw the comments on Facebook and elsewhere. And I just want to thank all of you very much for everything you did there. It really, I don't know of any place else in the world where there was such a positive and wonderful reaction for the devotees performing Harinam and distributing prasadam. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. And you're sparking the spiritual revolution. We need to continue this because, as I said in my last time with you, this is our time. And we're going to see more and more of this. It's going to be a wonderful experience for all of us to see how Lord Chaitanya's mercy floods the land. Now, that said, we have to recognize what the situation is. And that is basically speaking that we're in a war. Let's say, no, the first thing to recognize is that this world is controlled by demons, right? They have been in control of it for millennia, and we can judge by the result. Prabhupada said so many times, "Phalena prachite." You can't know who is demon, who is a deva, simply by looking, but you can understand by the activities that they perform. And so we see how the government's reacting to protesters all over the world. And for those who have taken the trouble to educate themselves what the nature of this so-called flu is and the nature of the so-called vaccine, this makes us, any intelligent person, realize that there is indeed a war against the people. And the demons, they're very powerful. They control the governments, they control the militaries for the most part, they control the banks, they control the media, they control the universities. What else? The press, of course. So the demons, they think at this point in time that they've got it all sewn up so that they don't have to hide themselves anymore. They can just come right out in the open and be who they are. And a lot of people are realizing as a result that we are in a war of good against evil. Many, many people, they recognize this. And so what do? Well, the demons are very powerful, but they're not more powerful than the Supreme Lord. And this is our time to call on the help of the Lord. In the 8th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where the Devas are fighting with the demons, they're not doing so well in the battle, and they realize that we need the help of Vishnu. And so they go and they appeal to the Supreme Lord for his help. So we need to do the same thing. And what we do, the way we fight this war, is to get more and more people to chant the holy name. A spiritual revolution in which there are no losers, everybody's a winner. And the result of this war, instead of it being destruction, is everybody becomes happy. So that's our agenda. That's where we have to go with this. Now, what I want to do is, in speaking about what is Iskcon, I need to give you some background material from my book. Maybe you've seen it. Oh, there we go. Divine and Demonic Spiritual Movements and the Enemies Within. And this book, for you folks down there, you can order from Amazon, I think .au, Australia, right? Is that their initials? Anyway, you could, Amazon has printing facility in Australia, and the book can be ordered from there.
I also have copies here.
I'm sorry?
I also have copies here.
Okay, good. So, yeah, in my writing, my spiritual economics book, and in this book, I refer to the demonic influence in this world. And again, it's something that anything that we're going to consider in terms of the events of the world, we have to take into account. In divine or demoniac, I say spiritual movements, plural, because in this book, what I look at first is the spiritual movement of Jesus and his followers in first century Palestine. And from the Dead Sea Scrolls, documents from that time, we can understand exactly who those people were. And the fact is that they were people exactly like us. That means Vaishnavas. In so many different ways. They had a masculine, feminine conception of deity. They glorified the names of the Lord. Their bathing habits were the same. They would not eat food cooked by non-devotees. Many of them were celibate. Many of them shunned ownership. They would live communally and share everything, understanding that it's the property of the Lord. Anyway, there's many, many similarities. And I begin the book with that discussion because the obvious question is, well, if Jesus and his followers were actually Vaishnavas like us, what happened? Because what passes as Christianity today looks nothing like Vaishnavism. And therefore, we're left wondering what happened. Well, I trace out some of what happened in the book. And the answer to that is that the powers that be, the powers of the time, the demonic powers of the time, the demonic powers of the time, they destroyed the Vaishnavas, for the most part entirely in the Jerusalem War, 7 years war. And they drove many of them to hinterlands. But then they co-opted the, let's say Jesus was a well-known spiritual leader, and they co-opted him and created a false religion in his name and convinced everybody that all they had to do was believe in him and they were saved, right? So there's no philosophy there, it's simply dogma. Just believe and you're saved. Well, this comes from the personality, the so-called Saint Paul, who is actually not a saint, but he's an infiltrator of the Roman establishment who went inside the movement of Jesus and James with the purpose of destroying it from within. I read about this from several sources, Robert Eisenman, his book, James, Brother of Jesus, and then Hans Joachim Schoeps, his books, Factional Disputes in the Early Church. And both of them were honest scholars who were, let's say, translating and presenting exactly what they heard, or read rather, in the Dead Sea Scrolls and Nag Hammadi texts, without interpretation, unlike the establishment scholars of the time who gave a spin on it and tried to say, "What? There's nothing to see here. It's just the same thing that we're getting in our modern Christian story." So everybody keeps disappearing. I wish you would turn your camera on so I could see you, because, or maybe it's too early in the morning. I don't know. You're still in your pajamas. That's okay. I don't mind, but it's nicer to see faces. Thank you, Josh. Hare Krishna. So what happened? And the powers that be, they co-opted this large religious movement. And by the way, it wasn't just Jesus and a dozen followers. The number of Vaishnavas in first century Palestine were in the many thousands, so much so that it took the full weight of the Roman army 7 years to finally conquer them. A formidable enemy. So anyway, they later, through the agencies of Paul, they co-opted Christianity and turned it into an impotent, spiritually void religion, in which people are told to pay to Caesar what is Caesar's. In other words, give honor to the state, right? You can worship, that's okay, but you still have to give proper honor to the state. And that's what the Romans wanted. Everywhere that they conquered, they only required that people pay their taxes. They wanted to exploit the entire known world at that time. And they had their tax collectors, and they were very good at it. But what I call Jewish Vaishnavas of first century Palestine, they wouldn't do that. They would not pay homage to anybody else except the Supreme Lord. Oh yeah, the Caesars also, in the conquered territories, they also required that the conquered people put the image of Caesar on the altar wherever they would worship. And the Jewish Vaishnavas refused to do that also. They would only worship the Supreme Lord. So hence the struggle, the battle, right? Because the demons, they want control. They want absolute submission from everybody. They think they're God. Just like Hiranyakashipu. What was his frustration? He says to Prahlad, how can you defy my attempts to control you? That was his frustration. That this little boy, blood relative or not, he was defying the great Hiranyakashipu, who was making everybody else surrender, but Prahlad, recognizing and surrendering to the Supreme Lord, he understood, I don't have to worship you. I'm protected by the Supreme Lord. And that was demonstrated in so many ways. So, as I was reading through this material, this was in the late 90s, early 2000, I recognized the parallel between this story and what had transpired in Iskcon. And doing so, I realized I have to tell this story. I have to write this book and make it clear what's going on, because if we look at the changes that have transpired in our society since the departure of Prabhupada, it is very clear that in another 200, 300, 400, 500 years, Iskcon's also going to be another impotent religion. Because the powers that be, they just want to bring everybody under control so that they'll do what they're told and pay homage to the state. Which brings us to today and what's going on in the so-called, or let's say, I'll refer to it as Iskcon Inc. How's that? I'll distinguish between Iskcon Inc., the institutional Iskcon, and Srila Prabhupada's Iskcon. And we'll get into those distinctions soon. So we see that the Iskcon Inc. authorities at this time, what are they doing? They're telling the devotees, no, we have to respect the state, right? We can't protest against the state. We're not political. I did watch some of Devamrita Swami's video lecture, 2 hours. I couldn't manage entire 2 hours, but I watched enough for him to make it clear that he was saying that, no, we don't get involved in political affairs. Well, it's true, we don't. We're not interested in trying to overthrow anybody. What we're interested in doing is glorifying the Supreme Lord, performing the Yuga-Dharma, that's given to us by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, understanding that we are soldiers in Lord Chaitanya's army. And what's our purpose? To create this spiritual revolution, to flood the world with Lord Chaitanya's mercy and make everybody happy. So it doesn't matter what protest is going on. We don't care what the protest is. We should go and do harinam. So when I was in Europe years ago, there was many big protests against austerity. Maybe you had some down there, I don't know. We went with the Sankirtan party in London to one protest. There was 200,000 people. It was an amazing thing to see. There was a 4-lane road in which the protesters there going from one end of London to the other. And this parade of people went on for well over an hour, constantly. And it was very wonderful to see. Everybody was coming down the street with a scowl on their face, like, we're against austerity, And then they would hear the kirtan party. And by the way, the devotees of London are quite well known for their harinams because they go out around London twice a day, every day for harinam. And so they would see the chanting party, and their faces would light up and they'd smile. And you could just see this transformation taking place in people as they heard the holy names of the Lord. And then when they passed the kirtan party, they would return to their grimace. So anyway, this is our business. We need to go where the people are because we want everyone as much as possible, not only to hear the holy names, we want them to get up, to take up chanting the Lord's holy names as well. And in this regard, we need to again start printing and distributing mantra cards. When I was a young devotee, we used to have those. I don't know if they're still being used, but there was one particularly that I thought was really wonderful. It said, for relief of all the anxieties of material life, please chant these names of God. And I thought, wow, that's a wonderful message. And that's a message that we should still be sending out. But not only that, but we need to tell people what we're doing. So I wrote up a little page. Who are these people and what are they singing? I sent it down to Vanessa. I don't know if it ever made it down there to Wellington or not. I hope it did.
It did. We printed a few hundred off. We took them down there and they were distributed down there.
Good. Okay, great. So yeah, we need to educate people so that they'll understand, all right? They're included. They can participate in the revolution, and this is what we want. Prabhupada, he said, if 1% of the people take up the chanting of the holy name, this is enough to change the face of the world. So this is our goal, 1%. And we should strive for that. So I've got a mantra card also. I don't know if you can see this. Join the spiritual revolution with the Maha Mantra on the backside. And everywhere I go, I ask people, if you're in anxiety about this, hey, we're in a war against good and evil. Please, this is a wonderful prayer to ask for the Lord's help. Please do that. Okay, so back to Iskcon. Now, My conclusion after, let's say I came to Iskcon in 73. So after about 30 years, I'm sorry, even after about 6 years, I could understand that things aren't quite right between the leadership and what Prabhupada was, his instructions were. So I've been in and out of Iskcon over the years. But I came to the conclusion that, back up, sorry, get my story straight. Prabhupada said, our movement cannot be defeated from the outside, only from within. And I came to the conclusion that this happened because if our enemies had wanted to destroy our mission, they could not have been more successful than the Iskcon leadership and their actions to undo our society, driving so many thousands of devotees away from the society and even the practice of Christian consciousness. So I detail that in my book. And then, so when we say infiltration, all right, if we say you destroyed from within, this implies infiltration. And then if we say, well, okay, infiltrated by who? Because if we look at almost any devotee, they, from a fairly objective point of view, especially if we don't know them well, they appear to be sincere followers of Prabhupada. And I know most of the GBC, and I would say that about most of them, not all of them by any stretch. And so there's come some incredulity in terms of, well, yeah, I know this Maharaj or that GBC, and, they don't look like they have an agenda, and so on. But again, Phalena Priyachite, what's the result? Okay. So I have one chapter titled, What is a Devotee? And in that chapter, I'm explaining the difference between form and substance. Now, we all know it's very easy to change your dress, put on tilak. With 3 words, you can get by on in any Iskcon temple, right? Jai, Haribol, and Prabhu. That's all you need to know. You just go in, somebody says something, you just say Jai, Haribol, Prabhu. So it's not hard to, pass as a devotee in any temple. Of course, you get the hang of it. You get to understand a little more of it before too long. So what's the form and what's the substance? The form. Now, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we have many examples of both those who have the form but not the substance, and those who have the substance but not the form. Okay? So, let's take Nunzio again.
Hi, Hare Krishna.
Anybody make that out? Didn't quite get that. Okay, anyway, I'll give some examples. Pondraka is an obvious one that comes to mind, right? Pondraka, he made up a couple of extra arms, fitted himself out like that, put all the Kaustubha jewel and all these things, and he says, I'm the original Vishnu, and anybody else is an imposter. So he had the form, but no, he's not Vishnu, right? Who else do we have? Any suggestions? Anybody want to suggest?
Pralambasura.
Okay. Well, explain.
Well, he appeared as a cowherd boy.
Oh, yeah, right. Thank you. Exactly. He's got the form and not the substance. Right. Just looking here.
Also Putana.
Yes, perfect. Putana, right. Anyway, there's many. Okay. Putana, Kali, the personality of Kali, right? He was wearing the robes of a king while he was harming the bull Dharma, and so on. So you get the idea, right? They've got the form, but they have no substance. Now, let's take the other case. Those who have the substance and not the form. Why? Because for a genuine devotee, especially advanced devotee, they care nothing about the form. Why? Because they have the substance. They're not interested in pretending and impressing anybody besides the Supreme Lord. And so they're not interested in anything that, any of the so-called perks. And we have many, many examples of this. Haridas Thakur, of course, is one, right? They would not allow him into the temple at Puri, but he was such a wonderful devotee. Lord Chaitanya, the Supreme Lord himself, used to come to visit Haridas. Another one, Jud Bharat. Jud Bharat, who appeared to be a foolish fellow, but was self-realized because in his previous incarnation as Bharat Maharaj, he had come all the way to Baba before he died, thinking of the deer. Ramananda Roy, again, he looked like a Vishayi, so much so that when he met Lord Chaitanya, all the brahmanas who were with him, they thought, why is this Sudra embracing this, or why is this sannyasi embracing this Sudra? They couldn't understand it. We've got Lord Shiva in the pastime with Daksha. Lord Shiva's got the substance, but not the form. So Daksha was criticizing him that, this person's not fit to be my son-in-law. He's my junior. He should be offering respect to me. And even Lord Chaitanya, prior to his taking sannyas, in fact, that was the reason for his taking sannyas, because people didn't recognize him as a spiritual authority. So I thought, okay, I'll take sannyas, and then people, at least they'll offer respect to my ashram, and thereby they'll be benefited. So there's many, many examples. And I go through many of them in the book. So you get the idea. Okay, form and substance, two very different things. Now, this concept of form and substance can be found in many different ways in all of our experience, and particularly in our society, right? I say, what is Iskcon? And I'm making the point that there is a difference between the form of Iskcon and the substance of Iskcon. However, most devotees, or let's say most of us, because of our conditioned nature and the fact that there are that institutions pervade every aspect of our life, we don't make any distinction, right? The institution is Iskcon, especially for junior devotees. However, those of my godbrothers and godsisters, or those who came in those early years, before there was an institution, right? Or let's say those devotees who developed the institution by their hard work and effort, they understand the form. What's the form? Srila Prabhupada, and his teachings. That's the form. Form, substance. The substance of Iskcon is Srila Prabhupada and his teaching. Okay? There was no form in those early years, and Prabhupada was everything. Prabhupada was Iskcon. There was no meaning to Iskcon without Prabhupada. So, now devotees, sometimes when I speak about this, they object. They say, well, Prabhupada created the institution. He incorporated Iskcon. And it's a fact, Prabhupada did that, but let's consider why he did that. One thing was he wanted his society to be recognized by the United States government as a bona fide religious organization. And one way to do that is to create what's called a 501c3, a nonprofit organization based on religious teachings. So Prabhupada did that. And the Achyutananda Prabhu, who was present there with Prabhupada when the incorporation papers arrived, he wrote in his book, that Prabhupada was beaming. Prabhupada was reading the mail and beaming like a father over his newborn child. But he said, this corporation, Iskcon, is very important, and it can be very helpful for us in spreading Krishna consciousness. However, if it becomes a problem, we can dissolve it. Okay? If it becomes a problem. So, right there, by that statement, Srila Prabhupada is saying that there is a difference between this form of Iskcon Inc. and the substance of Iskcon. That's from Prabhupada's own statement. Now, as Iskcon developed, let's say as Iskcon grew, as our society grew, more and more devotees came, more temples were opened. So then in 1970, Prabhupada recognized the need to get some assistance because it was too difficult for him to be everywhere in the world at the same time. So with the document entitled The Direction of Management, Srila Prabhupada created the GBC, which is an extension of the form. Okay? And Prabhupada explained in that document exactly who the GBC were, what their purpose was, and particularly what they would be after his passing. And I want to read a little bit from that. From that document. Prabhupada writes, the purpose of the governing body commission is to act as an instrument for execution of the will of His divine grace. And further, 1, the GBC oversees all operations and management of Iskcon as it receives direction from Srila Prabhupada, and His divine grace has the final approval in all matters. Now I'm reading this because most devotees, they don't take the trouble to find out this. It is on the database under legal documents. You can go there and you can find the direction of management and read this document there. Number 2, His divine grace will select the initial 12 members of the GBC. In succeeding years, the GBC will be elected by a vote of all temple presidents, who will vote for 8 from a ballot of all temple presidents. 3, the commissioners will serve for a period of 3 years, and they may be re-elected at the end of this period. 4, the chairman is elected by the GBC for each meeting. He has no veto power, but if there's a tie vote, his vote will make the difference. 5, throughout the year, each of the commissioners will spend 1 month at a time with His divine grace to inform the other commissioners of his instructions. So as his secretary to inform the other GBC what are Prabhupada's instructions. Now here's an important one. The primary objective of the GBC is to organize the opening of new temples and to maintain the established temples. 7, advice will be given to the GBC in the case of will be given by the GBC in the case of real property purchases, which will be in the name of Iskcon Inc. 8, removal of the temple president by the GBC requires the support of the local temple members. 9, the GBC has no jurisdiction in the publication of manuscripts, which will be handled by a separate committee. Profits to be returned to Srila Prabhupada. And that committee is the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. And so that's where it ends. There's another important point where Prabhupada says, oh yeah, it's earlier. Excuse me. Earlier it states that these personalities are considered to be my direct representatives. While I am living, they will act as my zonal secretaries, and after my demise, they will be known as executors. An executor is a person who carries out the will of another person. So Prabhupada makes it very clear here, both in that and the opening instruction, that they are to be his servants and to carry out his will, not to think of themselves as independent of him or in control of the society. So this was this effort by Srila Prabhupada to create helpers. Basically, he wanted them to do what he was doing, to travel around to the temples, encourage the devotees, give classes, adjudicate any problems that might be there, and make sure that everybody was chanting 16 rounds and following the principles. This is what Prabhupada did, and that's what he wanted them to do. He wanted them to be his assistant so that the movement could continue expanding with the support of the seniors. Now, bear in mind, at this time, 1970, the most senior devotee was around for 4 years. And at that time, there were very few books. And so everything that they knew, practically speaking, was learned directly from His Divine Grace, sitting at his feet in classes and hearing him. So Prabhupada was hopeful that in this way, with their assistance, he might be able to sometime retire and focus on writing. Unfortunately, this proved not to be the case, because very quickly, the title of GBC seemed to go to the heads of those individuals, and they began behaving as if they were independent of Srila Prabhupada. Now, I offer one, let's say, one, I would put it this, they might not be entirely malicious in what they were doing, in that all of us are indoctrinated into institutions in our Western life. And when you get a organization together, the only way we know how to organize, or let's say the main way, the default way, is to create a hierarchical control, where there's somebody at the top who's making decisions, and the others beneath them, they carry out those decisions. This is the way governments work. This is the way universities work. This is the way the military works. This is the way of institutions. And by the way, institutions are created by demons for the purpose of extending their control. In Vedic culture, we find no history of institutions. These came along only in Western culture. The earliest one I know is the East India Company around 16th century, maybe 15th century. But, so they're conditioned souls, young devotees, they got a title and it goes to their heads and they start taking control. And so they want to implement control the way most institutions do that. So Prabhupada, they had a meeting one year, 1972, so just 2 years later. They had a meeting with not even a quorum of the GBC, a small number of them. They got together, they decided that they were going to elect Atreya Rishi Prabhu as the secretary for the society, and that they decided on certain different affairs would have to go through him. In other words, they started creating a hierarchical control. So when Prabhupada heard about this, he was very upset, and I'm going to read part of his letter to the GBC, to the temple presidents. This letter goes on for quite a bit. I won't read all of it. My dear memo to all Iskcon temple presidents. I beg to inform you that recently some of the governing body commission members held a meeting at New York in 28 March 1972, and they have sent me big minutes duplicated for my consideration and approval. But in the meantime, they have decided some appointments without consulting me. One of the items which struck me very much is as follows, and this is a quote from their decision. Atreya Rishi was selected to be the secretary for the GBC and receive all correspondence, including monthly reports. Prabhupada writes, I never appointed Atreya Rishi member of the GBC, and I do not know how he can be appointed secretary to the GBC without my sanction. He was also appointed to be on the management committee with Karandar for the purpose of supervising Iskcon business and implementing the decisions reached by the GBC. This has very much disturbed me. Sriman Atreya Rishi may be very expert, but without my say, he has been given so much power, and this has upset my brain. I do not follow exactly what is the motive for the so-called GBC meeting. Therefore, I've sent a letter which you will find attached herewith, and I have received replies as well. Under these circumstances, and Prabhupada put this in all caps, I authorize you to disregard for the time being any direction from the GBC men until my further instruction. Manage your affairs peacefully and independently, and try to improve the spiritual atmosphere more carefully. Again, Prabhupada writes in all caps, all GBC orders are suspended herewith by me until further notice. So that was in March 1972. And so the way Prabhupada did, he wrote letters to all the GBC, he chastised them for this, as you can tell, very severely. But later that same year, in December of 1972, Prabhupada had again take very strong action against them, okay? Let's see, this is now in a now famous, and I'd be curious to know if any of you are aware of this letter. This is a letter to Karandar in 1972. Have any of you, who's heard of this letter? Anybody? Raise your hand. Oh boy. Okay, you gotta go on the database, find this and read it. It is extremely important. Okay. This letter goes on for 1, 2, 3, almost 4 pages. So I'm not going to read all of it again. I'll read the salient points. So let me give you a little background about Karandar. Karandar was he might have been the temple president in Los Angeles, which was the Iskcon World Headquarters at that time. And he was a very competent man, extremely competent. And he could handle all kinds of things. But again, what the GBC were trying to do is to centralize things and to create a hierarchical decision tree in which somebody at the top could control everything. And this again upset Prabhupada. So this is his letter to Kurandar, which was copied to all the GBC. Regarding your points about taxation, corporate status, etc., I've heard from Jayatirtha that you want to make big plan for centralized management, taxes, monies, corporate status, bookkeeping, credits, like that. Emphasize, this is my emphasis. I do not at all approve of such a plan. Do not centralize anything. Each temple must remain independent and self-sufficient. That was my plan from the very beginning. Why are you thinking otherwise? So again, right, they thought Iskcon was theirs. They could control it as they wished. They were the leaders of the society. We'll just take control of this thing and, you know, set it up the way we want. But Prabhupada said, no, what in the direction of management, he said, no, they're my assistants. They're supposed to carry out my will. But instead of carrying out my will, they're acting independently and doing something that I never approved. Okay, back to the letter. Once before, you wanted to do some centralizing with your GBC meeting, and if I did not interfere with the whole, the whole thing would have been killed. Do not think in that way of big corporation, big credit centralization. These are all nonsense proposals. Only thing I wanted was that book printing and distribution should be centralized. Therefore, I appointed you and Bali Mardan to do it. Otherwise, management, everything should be done locally by local men. Accounts must be kept, things must be in order and lawfully done, but that should be the each temple's concern and not yours. In other words, it wasn't the business of the GBC. It was simply under the management of the temple president, treasurer, and temple officers. Prabhupada did not want the temple president subordinate to the GBC. This is an extremely important point. He wanted to create a federation of independent temples with the GBC simply doing what he was doing to support them in their efforts. But they tried to take control, and of course, since then, they have taken control. Okay. Coming back to this, Krishna consciousness movement is for training men to be independently thoughtful and competent in all departments of knowledge and action, not for making bureaucracy. Once there is bureaucracy, the whole thing will be spoiled. There must always be individual striving and work and responsibility, competitive spirit, not that one shall dominate and distribute benefits to others, and they do nothing but beg from you and you provide. Maybe this is sounding familiar to some of you in your experience. No, never mind. There may be botheration to register each center, take tax certificate, etc. But that will train these men how to do things, and they shall develop reliability and responsibility, and that is the point. I am little observing now, especially in your country, that our men are not, that our men are losing their enthusiasm for spreading our programs of Christian consciousness movement. Otherwise, why so many letters of problems are coming dissatisfied? That is not a very good sign. In other words, you know, in those years, devotees could freely write to Prabhupada, and they did, especially those who had personal relationship with him in the early years, San Francisco, New York, and so on. And so they wrote to Prabhupada complaining about the GBC. So that's what he's referring to here. I'm getting so many letters, people are dissatisfied. That is not a very good sign. The whole problem is that they are not following the regulative principles. That I can detect. Without this, enthusiasm will be lacking. Even mechanically following, if he gradually gets understanding from the class, he will come to the point of spontaneous enthusiasm. The spontaneous, loving devotional service is not an easy matter, but if he simply sticks to the rules and regulations, rising early, chanting 16 rounds, chanting Gayatri, keeping always clean, then his enthusiasm will grow more and more. And if there is also patience and determination, one day he will come to the platform of spontaneous devotion. Then his life is perfect. So again, this goes on for several more pages. I'm going to read only a few highlighted sentences. So I do not think the leaders themselves are following, nor are they saying that the others are following strictly. That must be rectified at once. Then each center remains independent. Okay, fast forward a little bit. The GBC and sannyasis will travel and see that the officers are doing this, and if they observe any lowering of the standard, they must reform them and advise, or if there's some discrepancy, I will remove it. Further on, do not be so much anxious to count up many numbers of new devotees. If such devotees go away later, being too early forced, I want to see a few sincere devotees, not many false devotees or pretenders. So, in any case, I want to suggest to everybody that you find that letter and read it, because it is very instructive for how Srila Prabhupada wanted his society to be managed. That, along with the direction of management. Now, a very significant point is that this letter of direction of management establishing the GBC, nobody heard about this. That letter was not circulated in the society, and the only time that it came to light was in 1995 or 6. The Long Island Temple in New York was incorporated using the same incorporation documents, or let's say just a boilerplate from the incorporation of 2nd Avenue in New York City. So it was Iskcon Inc. And the leaders of that temple, they later joined the Ritvik camp. And so the Iskcon Inc. leaders wanted to sue to acquire that temple back. And in the lawsuit, they were trying to they're making the case that we are the GBC, we are in control, and therefore the temple belongs to us. But the defendants, they showed the incorporation papers, and there is no mention of the GBC in that document. So therefore, the GBC, they went and they produced the direction of management, which is the first time that this document was ever seen. And this was, of course, just at the beginning of the internet. And this created another sensation, another huge disappointment, because the devotees were looking at this and saying, well, wait a minute, Prabhupada said the GBC are supposed to be elected every 3 years. That was never done. Why was this never done? Why are the GBC not following Srila Prabhupada? This is what he instructed them to do. So we join, right? We come later. All the innocent devotees, they read Prabhupada's books, they come to the society, and they just assume that what's going on in the society is exactly what should be going on. They assume that these leaders are the responsible parties who are taking care of the will of His divine grace and taking care of the institution to see it go forward. But instead of doing that, we find that the leaders, they're not following His divine grace. They're doing things that His divine grace specifically forbid them to do, and they ignore those instructions. You just go along their merry way. Why? Because they've come to set themselves up in an ivory tower where there is no recourse. Regardless of what they do, there is no way to bring them under control. There is no way to rectify the situation, no matter how many rank and file devotees clamor and ask for reform, as has been going on for decades. And out of frustration, these devotees, they just throw up their hands and leave. Many of them go to Gaudiya Math, or they have gone, especially in the late 90s. And at that time period, many God brothers left and went to Narayan Maharaj camp. Or when they want to stay aligned with Srila Prabhupada, they've joined the so-called Ritvik camp. And, you know, because why? The Ritvik devotees, they are, regardless of what you might think of their concept for Diksha, they are loyal to Prabhupada, and they are the only ones at this point in time who are distributing Prabhupada's original books. So, now, what's the form and what's the substance of Iskcon? The form is the corporation and the hierarchical corporate structure with hierarchical control, top-down decision-making. We have a situation now where the GBC, through the regional secretaries, they control every aspect of the temple, something that Srila Prabhupada specifically forbid. But they've set it up that way. And the junior devotees who come along not knowing any difference and not bothered to investigate such things. After all, you know, my Guru Maharaj, he wouldn't be deliberately deviating from Srila Prabhupada, would he? The question is, why aren't the gurus challenging the GBC? Why aren't they en masse walking out of the society saying that this is not what Prabhupada wanted? Those are questions that we can only ask rhetorically, and it'd be nice to have answers, but no, you know, the situation is that nobody has to answer. So the substance of Iskcon. What is Iskcon? Srila Prabhupada is Iskcon. Srila Prabhupada's teachings are Iskcon. And Iskcon is still there to the extent that the devotees will individually make it their responsibility to follow Srila Prabhupada faithfully and do what he said to do. So it's not that Iskcon it's gone. Iskcon Inc. is gone. Iskcon Inc. is not following Srila Prabhupada. And this is what to speak of the whole system that they set up for Diksha, where the GBC interferes with who can be a guru, who can be a disciple, and meddles in that relationship. That's another whole quagmire, which is completely oppositanta. So we've got the situation where the top leadership have deviated and destroyed what Prabhupada created. Now the question is, who is going to understand what Prabhupada wanted and make it their personal responsibility to continue this mission that Srila Prabhupada started? Now at this point, many of you men that I'm looking at, you're in your midlife, you're in 40s and 50s. You've probably been around Iskcon for 25, 30 years, and you know what the score is. Myself and my peers, we don't know how much time we have left. Maybe we have another decade, maybe two, who knows? Two, probably not. So the bigger question is, which ones of you are going to make it your responsibility to carry forward the mission that Srila Prabhupada set up? Pay no attention to the GBC. Let them do whatever they're going to do. There's billions of people in this world who are doing their own thing, and we can't be bothered with that. Okay? The question is, what's the right thing to do and who's going to do it? And we have to understand what Prabhupada wanted, and we make it our own personal responsibility, not because we're in some institution, somebody's telling us what to do. No, we take it on ourselves to push forward what Srila Prabhupada wanted. And we should have the situation by now that instead of having one person who is individually, selflessly trying to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, there are dozens. And there are such devotees in every continent, in every country. And it's a waste of time to complain about what the GBC is not doing. Don't spend your energy like that. It's a complete waste of energy. Rather, you just do what you know is the right thing to do. So again, I want to applaud all of you for having gone, who have just disregarded Devamrita Swami and whoever else, temple presidents, just gone down there to Wellington, carried on with the Yuga-Dharma, chanting, distributing prasadam, and we can see by the result, right? Phalena Prichite. I've read some of these wonderful comments that the people are making, and it brings me to tears to hear that. There will be millions of stories like that. We can have firm faith in that. And all we need to do is continue. Lord Chaitanya's mercy is flowing through us. He's the powerhouse, we're the conduit, right? It's not us who are doing anything. We're the instrument, we're the pen in the hand of Srila Prabhupada. We're the instrument to execute, to bring the mercy of Lord Chaitanya to the people of this world. So don't be confused. Please study, go back and look at these historical documents, understand what Iskcon is, what the substance of Iskcon is, and you make it your personal mission to carry it out. Thank you. I'll stop there for discussion.
Thank you very much. It was very inspiring and enlightening presentation. I'm sure everybody got a lot out of it. How you're saying that that religious movements such as Iskcon has been infiltrated by demonic influences. So how are we to see the leadership that is very much opposed to what we did in Wellington? So much negative and public, notifications in the paper that they disassociate with this sort of thing. How are we to understand and treat the leaders in this way? I mean, there's are they demons? Are our leaders demons, or are they've aligned with a demonic government? So how do we understand that? How do we understand that they? You understand what I'm trying to say?
It's not necessary. Whatever they are, they are. Whatever they do, they do. We don't care. Okay? Now, the one thing that we want to be careful with is that we do not ourselves create another institution, because an institution is such a thing where authority is placed in a seat or a position, GBC, temple president. And regardless of the qualification, whoever sits in that seat, they have the authority to tell others what to do, right? Prime minister, president, all, you know, the demons have created these institutions to give one person control over thousands and millions of other people, you know? Why? Because Jacinta is, you know, says something, everybody in New Zealand is supposed to follow it. You know, that's what you're protesting. And actually, the protest is not against the mandates. The protest should be against the whole arrangement of the government. Anyway, that's another discussion. But in terms of our society, what we want is a association, a non-institutional organization. In other words, organized together, but no institution, right? Simply on the basis of cooperation. So you have your Rath Yatra and devotees come from other parts of New Zealand, like that. You don't need a hierarchical institution to have events like that. So, nor for spreading Christian consciousness. What we need to come back to actually is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur started, right? The Namahata program. Because these people, you know, they're going to read in the newspaper about the official Iskcon. We have nothing to do with those people that are out there in Wellington. Okay, well then the people who've been there, they've had a wonderful experience. They're in love with chanting Hare Krishna. Where are they going to go? I hope you got their names, and I hope that you will follow up. And each of you, if you know, you find out people who are living near you and invite them to your house for understanding, give them the Bhagavad Gita class, more prasadam. Hey, you know, want some more of that Krishna, wonderful Krishna prasad? Come on over. That's the way we continue, right? Independently thoughtful men, following the instructions of His Divine Grace. Again, whatever the Iskcon so-called leaders are, it doesn't matter. That's what they are. What they are. It's just like this other 7 billion people in the world. There's all kinds of people in the world. They are what they are. We don't need to bother with them. We simply need to understand what's the right thing to do and do that. Does that help?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. You're welcome. Nice to see you today.
Ganeshwara Prabhu, thank you for your association. I just wanted to share that what's there for me about this whole thing is that the testimonials that we got and the experiences that we had make all of the backlash worthwhile. Like even my fiance has stopped talking to me, you know. I'm pretty sad.
Who's
my
stopped talking?
fiance.
Oh, Krishna.
You know, and I heard other people there saying that their family has abandoned them also. So even
That's
for them,
the times that we're in, there's a divide going on in so many ways, but better this divide happens by Krishna consciousness. You know, what can you do? I think there's got to be some astrological influence there, that, you know, people are being forced to take sides, and we see who is who. Anyway, follow your heart. My best advice to you is you follow your heart and your inspiration, regardless of the circumstances, the results, what anybody else is going to do, right? You won't go wrong if you follow your heart.
here's a question
I'm
for you.
sorry, I interrupted you. maybe you have some more to
that's
say.
cool. No, you just redirect. You're directing it in a way that Krishna wants it to go. my my friend said to me, "What's next? What are you going to do now?" I said, "Whatever
Yeah.
Krishna wants." He said, "Don't you know that by the spiritual master?"
Yeah.
So when I
Right.
said that, he went to that, and it's true, but it's also like, I don't know. When he said that, it kind of triggered me. I was like, well, my spiritual master, His Holiness Devamarita Swami, is not inspiring me so much right now. And my friend's like, you know what pleases Krishna by what he says. But I had the experience that by following my heart, you know, for the last 23 days, you know, at that place, I really did get Krishna's reciprocation. Like, he really was pleased with me, despite that my spiritual master wasn't. Although, having said that, he didn't directly tell me he wasn't. I think maybe he made that public statement as a diplomatic thing to appease a lot of people, and because he is obliged to say that. So anyway, there's just a few thoughts I have. If you want to comment on that, be grateful.
Yeah. Please listen to my earlier lecture about Diksha. Oh wait, that's not posted yet. I'm editing that. It will be posted on Vanessa's YouTube channel. So first thing to understand is we are all disciples of Srila Prabhupada, right? Diksha is defined as the process of transference of transcendental knowledge. And as we read Srila Prabhupada's books, that transcendental knowledge is transmitted, and this is Diksha. So it's not, you know, some devotees think that, well, you know, Prabhupada is not my spiritual master. No. For the entire world, Prabhupada is the spiritual master, because anybody who's learning anything about genuine spiritual life is learning it from Srila Prabhupada or through his agency. So get clear on that. And even if, and particularly if, my godbrothers who have disciples, if they see that their guru is deviating from Srila Prabhupada's instructions, this it creates quite a significant challenge, maybe even a crisis. And I'd hope that you have the opportunity to question them on that matter. Many devotees do not have the opportunity to have even an email exchange with the person who initiated them. What to speak of an ongoing or lengthy conversation as that might be. But again, many devotees, they take initiation before understanding exactly what they're doing. This is somewhat their fault, but in the way things are done today, and particularly in Iskcon, it's a in some ways a social movement. Young men and women come and they join together in a spiritual society. Of course, reading Prabhupada's books, we expect the substance to be there in the society, and it's not until years later that many of them do not see that. Usually those rose-colored glasses come off after about 5-6 years, when they get some adhikar, some understanding of the substance of Srila Prabhupada's teachings. And then they're in a quandary. And I'll say that because of my direct and honest speaking, devotees come to me from all over the world inquiring about what's going on. How do I understand this? And the only way I know to reply is to be honest and explain what did Srila Prabhupada want and what the deviations of the GBC have been. Now, unfortunately, one other thing that's significant here is the GBC requires of all gurus to be subordinate to them. They require all gurus, all Iskcon gurus, all temple presidents, all regional secretaries to sign a yearly oath of allegiance, not to Prabhupada, but to them. An oath of allegiance to the GBC. But we've seen over the decades that the GBC, they're not at all infallible, that they many times don't even follow their own laws, what they call laws. And we see that they have the audacity to try to create Siddhanta in terms of how they've arranged the initiating system. So, what can I say? I would say, first of all, understand what Krishna consciousness is, and it's the opportunity to free yourself as an individual from the shackles of this material world and go back to Godhead. Second of all, it is the opportunity for us, let's say a Vaishnava, he is concerned about the welfare of others. Lord Chaitanya said, para upakara, do good for others. So naturally, the Vaishnavas, having received this wonderful gift from Srila Prabhupada, where they're realizing this is the most valuable thing that could ever be, they naturally want to share it with others. And through kirtan, through prasadam, and through classes and so on. So just do that. Find a way to do that. You carry on, you support each other, you join together as an informal group, supporting each other, and I'm happy to support you in any way to continue with this. Is that okay?
What I heard you say was that Srila Prabhupada is the spiritual master, and so if a spiritual master who is meant to represent him is not, then you just, in one sense, you can bypass that. And because the main thing is that we're linked with Prabhupada, and we should go on doing that which pleases Srila Prabhupada.
Right. Again, first thing is to understand what you're doing in spiritual life, what this whole process is of Vaishnava Siddhanta, what you're engaged in, what the opportunity you have in your life. And then the next thing is to figure out a way that you can execute that so that you can be successful, regardless of what the circumstances are, because the fact is there is no material impediment to spiritual life, okay? There's only, let's say, we may create impediments for ourselves by our attachments, but we need to recognize that and let go of those attachments that are keeping us from making progress. So it's a science. Krishna consciousness is a science. Science means if you do the experiment properly, you must get the result. And if you're not getting the result, you look and find out what you're doing wrong. Because it's simple, really, right? You do the positives and you avoid the negatives. And you do that with the help of your friend. You can make an evaluation, see what you're doing, how you're progressing. You should know the science so that you can see that you're making progress step by step. It's a gradual process, but there's signs by which you can understand that you're making progress. Okay,
Thank
I
you.
hope that helps. Yeah. Don't be shy. If you have a question, please ask or a comment. Okay, David. David, I don't remember your initiated name. I know we've had some exchange in the past, but okay. The clearest and most complete visionary treatise on this subject I've found is Srila Prabhupada, The Prominent Lake by Dear Govinda Das. I think anyone who reads this will be astounded and inspired, especially in terms of what you and I do now to be aligned with and please Srila Prabhupada. Ah, there it is. Atmananda Das. Ah.
Yes, we know each other.
Okay. I don't agree entirely with Dear Govinda's document, although there's, for the most part, it's very good, but it's Dear Govinda subscribes to the concept of posthumous diksha, which I do not agree with. In any case, Dear Govinda is a personal friend of mine. I think he's a wonderful devotee, very sincere, and I have a great deal of respect for him.
Right. So you have some disagreement with his philosophy standing on posthumous diksha.
Right.
And yeah, you respect him. He's a friend, as he is with me. I'm sharing this because I've read the book carefully, and I found that even I've read it 2 or 3 times. It's so deep, and it's been to say that Dear Govinda ascribes to the posthumous diksha approach. I'm not sure about that, but that for me that's it's very important. But as I say, when I study and apply the book, it's been greatly inspiring for me. So much so that it's helped me to be clear about a lot of things you're talking about and more, and particularly how to act now so that I can be sure I'm aligned with Srila Prabhupada and that I'm able and effective, and as you're saying, to help others to do the same thing and not get entrapped in my old habit of condemning and giving so much energy to those who are not doing what they should be doing, GBCs, whoever.
Right.
It's changed my life dramatically, and that's been since gradually more and more since 2004, since I've been working directly with, spent time, lived with Dear Govinda, and the seminars and the coach training, etc., based on Prabhupada's teachings, are the center of my life. And I've been doing that, gradually building up more and more, as Buddhimanta and other devotees in Whangarei, and some in Auckland know, for years, pretty much since then.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your comment. Again, I have a great respect for him. And one reason why many devotees appreciate that book is because it gives them a means of remaining connected with Srila Prabhupada without being under the thumb of the GBC, who they come to the conclusion is deviating from Srila Prabhupada's instructions. So it's a great tragedy for the society, but we have to remember that we are in the material world. The demons control this world, and they're doing everything they can to maintain that control. In fact, that was the working title of my book, was Maintaining Control. And they have no morals, no compunctions. They will lie, cheat, steal, kill, whatever. And they're going for it now. We can see in a big way. So now we're coming to the fight. We're coming to the, you could say, Kurukshetra, where the gloves are coming off. Everything is coming. All the cards are being laid down on the table. We can see who is who. And the question is, how's this fight going to get carried out? All the people on the divine side, we have to be active. We can't have our heads in the clouds thinking that, oh, it's a wonderful world and I'll just try to be happy here and enjoy. We have work to do. We have a lot of work to do. And we are Lord Chaitanya's army. So we have to get busy. This is our time.
Yes, I appreciate that point hugely. And you mentioned that already in your talk, that we have a great opportunity, which does require great taking responsibility on our own shoulders, cooperatively, under the direction of Srila Prabhupada. And so study and discussion of Prabhupada's books, for me, is really the basis. And that's what Dear Govinda focuses on. And he's, as you probably know, he's expert in that. And he's deeply realized he is I will say it publicly, that he is the most pukka and expert and qualified sadhaka that I know.
There are more.
No, I'm saying
anyway,
about
we can't know everybody, but
I'm talking about my own experience.
Okay.
And obviously my experience is very limited, but that's my experience. His japa is just every day when I struggle to chant my japa seriously and not allow myself to be distracted, I think of his quality of japa. I've been with him. I spent months with him living in his place. And, so my point is, and his point is, that if the more we study Srila Prabhupada's books and discuss them, because Prabhupada established Ishtagosti, for example, as you know, very important, getting together to discuss the instruction of the spiritual master. And Prabhupada says in many places that discussing with other devotees his teachings is the way to become detached, the way to understand how we go together, in particular in this particularly challenged Kurukshetra situation you're describing, and which is there with all this polarization. How do I know how to please Srila Prabhupada right now in this particular challenge? As you say, bring our heads out, get my head out of the clouds, and look at what's the opportunity and the excitement, the exciting adventure right now to please Srila Prabhupada and spread his glories far and wide.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comment. Who else? Any other? Let's see if somebody else has a question.
Thank
Comment.
you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Gaura. Hare Krishna.
Haribo, I'm sorry, I've been kind of intermittently dropping in and out.
I can see you're involved
because
with
of batteries and kids and
yeah.
a small little arm of girls. So thank you very much for the instruction, the advice to follow your heart. This is before I came to Krishna consciousness, I always had this conviction: follow your heart and proceed with confidence. That and as I came to learn our Siddhanta, I could understand that yes, Krishna is Adi Guru. He's situated in the heart, directing each and every individual. And at this time, when we see institutions for what they are, I really appreciate your advice that you were saying. One thing we should be wary of is not to create another institution, and rather that as individuals, we each have to take it upon ourselves to say, okay, I'm going to make it my responsibility to this pleasing to Krishna. Of course, you know, Srila Prabhupada has established Iskcon, but I find troubling whenever I hear those, we have to act under the guidance of Srila Prabhupada. I mean, he's not now, so we have to for the hearts, and then if we're following the heart, surely if we need some external confirmation of what we're feeling in the heart, which we all do. There's the internal Chaitya Guru, and there's external manifestation Shiksha Guru and Diksha Guru. So I always have some trouble when it seems as if things are going towards the Ritvik side, where we act under the guidance of Srila Prabhupada. We do require shiksha and guidance. At least I do. I need someone to slap me. I need someone to pull me by the ear and inflict discipline upon me. All of that shiksha from Srila Prabhupada and through his books. I need someone who's physically present to help me. So yeah, it's just a comment that we should be wary not to slide over to the Ritvik side. That's not what I've learned in our Siddhanta.
Yeah. I will say that it's important for all of us to have peer association. A friend who knows us, who we know, who can help us along with our questions and so on. And if, you know, many years ago, 30 years ago, some of the devotees here in the United States were creating men's groups where the men could come together on a periodic basis and support each other in their spiritual life and all aspects of life, actually. But it was all made up of devotees who were basically peers, who were on the same level, who could give some frank advice or a kick in the ass if you needed. So I would suggest to you, even if, you know, now we have Zoom, and even if you're not physically close to somebody, you know, come together, make such a group. It'll be very beneficial for all of you.
There's a
Thank
comment. Sorry. There's a comment here from Krishnendu. I'll just read it. Can you read it there?
Let me see. Oh yeah, there's two messages that are down there. Krishnendu. So when do we quote unquote stay neutral, and when do we quote unquote take sides? Is it even possible or desirable to stay neutral? Isn't it an ongoing battle between good and evil? The challenge in this statement is that most people in this world are affected by duality. That is, good and bad. This is good, that's bad. And so therefore we think of ourselves as good people. Goody, can you mute, please? We think of ourselves as good people, and we want to do good. And so we go to what we think is the good side. Now, as devotees, let's say, for a yogi, the first business of a yogi is to learn how to bring the mind under control. The mind is the source of duality, right? Because the mind thinks that he's the enjoyer. So my mind says, I like this and I don't like that, right? That's the business of the mind, to accept or reject on the basis of sense gratification. I want this, I don't want that. This is good, this is bad. So Krishna says the uncontrolled mind is one's worst enemy. And if you don't have your mind under control, it's your enemy. Okay, so we have a process for bringing the mind under control. Right? What's that? Anybody? Go ahead. Let me hear you.
Chanting Hare Krishna.
Yeah, more specifically.
Engaging in Krishna's service.
Chanting Hare Krishna how?
How?
Trinarapi Sunichena, Aurarapi Sahishnuna, Amanida Madadena.
Congregationally.
Chanting Hare Krishna is partially correct.
Japa.
Yes, japa. I
Japa.
don't know who said japa. Japa is it, right? What's japa? Japa is a meditation, and the object of meditation is to focus the mind. And Krishna tells us in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, from wherever and wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. So, many devotees are not trained with that understanding. We say, I have to chant my rounds. Better to say, it's time for me to hear my rounds. It's time for me to meditate on my rounds. To practice controlling the mind, to bring it under control, so that when the mind is brought under control, what happens? Hot, cold, happiness, distress, honor and dishonor, they're all the same. What are those? Duality. When the mind is brought under control, the devotee becomes free from duality. That must be the goal. Because then the devotee can properly evaluate things in terms of what pleases Krishna. Not what pleases me, what pleases my senses, what pleases my mind. No, what is pleasing to Krishna? What is Krishna's instruction? What is instruction from my acharya, my guru? So then we can be properly directed. Okay, so we have the instruction from Mahaprabhu himself. Harinam, 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 Ev Kevalam, Kalona Steva, Nasteva, Nasteva, Gatiranyata. That's our business. The Yugadharma. So, anyway, going back to your question. So when do we stay neutral? We should always stay neutral, and it's not a matter of taking sides. We're not taking sides to overthrow Jacinta or overthrow old Biden, as I call him, or any of the other people. We don't care about that. That's going to go on way beyond our control. What do we want to do? We want to purify the atmosphere by the vibration of the holy names, so that the consciousness of everyone is uplifted. And we see the effect of consciousness raising. People who were involved in keeping this deep state going, they come to a point where they can't take it anymore, and they either quit or they become whistleblowers, and they tell exactly what's going on. Why? That's a matter of consciousness. Their consciousness will not allow them to continue to do those things. So this chanting of Hare Krishna raises the consciousness of everyone on the planet. All of us must engage in it and get as many other people to do that. Then there's no taking sides. We're on Krishna's side. If you want to say taking sides, we're on Krishna's side. And everybody is also, Krishna is concerned about the welfare of all living beings. So, yes, there is an ongoing battle between good and evil. And our duty is to participate in the Yugadharma. So, Krishnendu, is that okay? Do you have a follow-up question or comment about that?
Could I mention
Gaurav?
something, Prabhu?
Yeah, say whatever you want.
Just recently. Yeah. My Shiksha Guru, my Shiksha Guru is in the UK, in Manchester. Yugadharma Mahaprabhu. I don't know if you
Don't know him.
know Yugadharma Mahaprabhu.
Gora's breaking up for me. Is he
He's
breaking up for anybody else?
a disciple of Srila Prabhupada who took shelter of Gaur Govinda Maharaj. And just recently, I hadn't heard from him for a while. So I asked him, is everything okay? And Iskcon. When he from India, this time about 6 months ago, they told you're not allowed in any of our temples, again, anywhere in the world. So he said, okay, fine, no problem. Because Govinda Maharaj had told him that it would happen. And so he was praying and praying, and he just decided what he would do. He would just carry on preaching as normal. And he's created a little group. It's called Gaudiya Vaishnava Society in Manchester, and Srila Prabhupada appeared in his dream and told him, I want you to follow Gaur Govinda Maharaj's instructions that you should take disciples. I want you to initiate your own men. So he's initiated 3 people so far in the last couple of months, and so I think this is the way forward. That faith cannot be legislated. If somebody has faith in somebody, then nobody can legislate that. It's Krishna speaking in the heart to somebody. Well, somebody is inspiring them so they can take shelter. So, yeah, I have, I say these phrases, my Shiksha Guru, Madhavananda Prabhu, different people who inspire me, and I take shelter from them and they guide me. I would really appreciate living with someone who could, observe a daily rascaldom and kick me in the ass.
Yeah, so we should all be so fortunate to have well-wishers who are happy to straighten us out from time to time. But we should hopefully require that less and less, and the process works. All we have to do is apply it. And yeah, I'm also in the band club, so well, they haven't really kicked me out. They allow me to go to temples, but I'm not allowed to speak or stay in any temples, so they don't want my influence there. So I wear that as a badge of honor. Okay, last chance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Prabhupada, Hare Krishna.
Hi, Prabhu.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I saw you were very deeply moved by the response from persons in the public that who knows may become devotees, and I think we all were reading those comments on and that's the proof. The proof is there that people are really inspired from the heart, and they're really keen to get some more of that taste from the prasadam and from the chanting and everything that they saw there. The devotees, as we call it, holding the line and the protest, they were there too, and that was, everybody saw how well they did. I wish I could have been there. I've been to some of the build-up, but I wasn't there because of moving house and whatnot. But watching everything from here, I was really amazed how courageous the devotees were, how they worked together as such an incredible team. And I think devotees are doing this maybe in other countries too. I'd love to know more about what they're doing. Maybe there could be some networking going on internationally. But to see what the devotees did was so inspiring. And I got to pay my dandavat pranams to all of them. That's all I wanted to say. Great to see that you were touched by that too.
Thank you very much. Yes, now you all have to work together to give them, all those people who are inspired, you have to give them some place to go. Because what will happen is they had such a wonderful experience, they'll look up Hare Krishna online, they'll go to the temple, right? And sooner or later they're going to find out the temple said don't go there, and they're going to become very bewildered, right? But if hopefully you got some names, some contact information from those people, please, you start Now you contact them, just invite them to your house. You don't have to be anybody special. Just share what you have. Share prasadam, share your understanding. You're certainly more knowledgeable than they are, and they'll be happy to have somebody who's a friend, who's a Hare Krishna, where they can come over and get some of that good Hare Krishna food now and again. So, Hare Krishna curry, as they say. So.
Thank you very much, Danesh Prabhu, for that comment. I think it's because there's so many people out there who are eagerly, desperately wanting Prabhupada and Krishna consciousness. We have a great opportunity to use our energy together to cultivate these people and give them Prabhupada the best way we can.
Yes. Okay, thank you all again for the opportunity to have your association, to share my realization, my understanding. I hope, let's say, if you have any questions about this, anything comes up, please come back, get back to me. I plan on continuing this class every week through the agency of Buddhimanta Prabhu. And so if you have any further comments, come back, bring them, let's discuss, or, join us for our future classes also. Again, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranams.
Hare
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.